There's a moment every parent dreads, not the tantrums, not the sticky fingerprints, not even the "I forgot it was due today" school projects. It's the moment your kid looks up at you with that carefully rehearsed innocence and asks for a pet. Most parents get requests that live safely in the realm of possible. A goldfish. A rabbit. A cat that will ignore everyone equally. Maybe a dog, if you can survive the chewing phase and the mysteriously wet smells. Alara Rowan's 10-year-old son asks for something else. Not a husky. Not a rescue mutt with dramatic eyebrows. A wolf. An actual wild thing, mud on its paws, a limp in its step, and eyes the color of old amber that don't dart like an animal's shoulder. Noah stands in the kitchen like he's guarding treasure, arms wrapped around the bundled weight of it as if letting go would make it disappear. Alara has just come home from a double shift, the kind that leaves your bones humming and your patience thin as paper. She's still wearing her exhaustion when she sees it, this predator in her aunt's crumbling boarding house, in the middle of her new life she's barely holding together. Every instinct she has screams no. No, because it's dangerous. No, because it's insane. No, because she can't afford vet bills when she can't even afford to replace the broken railing on the back steps. No, because a single mother doesn't get to gamble with the one person she has left. And yet Noah's face, Noah's quiet, fragile hope, stops the word in her throat. He hasn't lit up like this in months. Not since the move to Briar Hollow. Not since the late-night packing, the whispered promises, the constant apologizing for a life that keeps shifting under his feet. For the first time in a long time, her son looks like a child again, instead of a boy bracing for the next disappointment. So Alara does what tired parents sometimes do when love collides with logic, she bargains with herself. One night. Just until it can stand. Just until morning, and then I'll do the responsible thing. She tells Noah not to get attached while he's already attached. She checks for blood and burrs and the sharp edges of ribs under fur. She thinks about fleas, ticks, rabies, every ordinary fear she can name, because ordinary fears feel manageable. What Alara doesn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, is that the wolf in her kitchen isn't a wolf at all. It's about a lost little girl named Lisa, a child who can't keep her own skin steady, who ran too far, changed too young, and got stuck halfway between what she is and what she's trying to hide. And somewhere beyond Briar Hollow, out where the mountains swallow sound, and the trees remember secrets, Lisa's father is already moving. Cale Blackmore doesn't search like a man looking for something misplaced. He hunts like a storm with a name. He follows her scent across miles of wilderness with a cold, disciplined terror tightening his chest, because in his world, a child isn't just a child. She's packed. She's a legacy. She's vulnerable. And the thought of human hands on his daughter doesn't soften him, it sharpens him. By the time Alara finally locks the boarding house door for the night, Cale is already closing the distance. And kindness, simple, human kindness, has just placed a target on her home. Subscribe now so you're here for every turn this story takes. Alara will look back later and realize the story didn't begin with a wolf in her kitchen. It began weeks earlier, the day she drove into Briar Hollow with a rattling car, a hollowed-out savings account, and one last inheritance she was desperate to turn into a future. The town appeared the way some places do in old postcards, soft-edged and deceptively calm. Pine trees crowded the road, their branches knit together like they were trying to keep secrets from the sky. The mountains rose up in the distance, blue and heavy, like they'd been there long before anybody thought to build a diner or a school or a "Welcome to Briar Hollow" sign with paint already peeling from the corners. Noah sat in the passenger seat with his hood up, earbuds in, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. 10 years old and already tired in a way kids shouldn't be. He didn't complain. That was the worst part. Children are supposed to complain when you uproot them. They're supposed to pout and sulk and throw dramatic sighs like confetti. Noah just went quiet. Alara kept both hands on the steering wheel, partly because the car vibrated if she didn't, partly because she needed something steady to hold on to. She'd told him this move would be different. Fresh start. New air. New school. A house with space. A chance to finally stop running on borrowed time. Her words had sounded brave in the cramped apartment they'd left behind. On this road, under these watchful trees, they sounded like a promise she didn't know how to keep. The boarding house sat at the edge of town where the pavement thinned into gravel and the gravel surrendered to forest. It had once been handsome, Alara could see that in the bones of it. 3 stories with a wraparound porch, tall windows, and carved trim that hinted at a time when people believed beauty was worth maintaining. Now it looked like it had spent the last decade losing arguments with wind and weather. Paint flaked in long curls. The porch sagged on one corner like it was exhausted too. The front steps complained when she climbed them, and the front door stuck halfway open, forcing her to shoulder it like the house was testing whether she deserved to come in. Inside, it smelled like dust and old wood and faint lavender, the ghost of her aunt's soap. There were rooms with mismatched furniture and quilts folded with care, as if someone had kept up the habit of hospitality long after the guests stopped coming. The wallpaper in the hall bubbled where moisture had gotten behind it. A chandelier hung crooked, missing 2 crystals, stubbornly pretending it was still elegant. Noah stood in the entryway and looked around like he was trying to decide if this was real or temporary. Alara forced brightness into her voice. "Okay," she said, as if saying it confidently could hold the place together. "We clean. We fix. We get it running. We make it ours." Noah's eyes flicked to the staircase, then to a dark stain on the ceiling where a leak had once been. He gave a small nod that might have meant sure or I don't have the energy to argue. Alara pretended not to notice the difference. That first week was a blur of lists and aches. Alara slept on a mattress on the floor because the bed frames upstairs looked like they'd collapse out of spite. She found a broom in the pantry and swept up what felt like an entire history of dirt. She opened windows to air out the rooms and listened to the house creak as if it were speaking in its own language. Every day, the work revealed another problem. A faucet that didn't stop dripping no matter how tight she turned it. A section of roof shingles that fluttered in the wind like loose teeth. A bathroom door that didn't latch unless you lifted it and shoved with your hip. The boiler made a sound like an animal trying to cough up a secret. The money she'd saved, her fresh start fund, began dissolving the moment she looked at it. Lumber costs. Paint. Replacement locks. A plumber who took one look at the pipes and whistled like that was supposed to make it less expensive. She took every shift she could find. Mornings at the diner on Main Street, pouring coffee and learning the locals by their orders. Evenings cleaning cabins for a woman who rented them to tourists in the summer. Nights doing bookkeeping for a hardware store owner who paid in cash and didn't ask questions. By the end of most days, Alara's body felt like it belonged to someone else. She came home smelling like dish soap, pine cleaner, and exhaustion. Noah started school. That should have been the anchor. Instead, it became another thing Alara failed to fix with optimism. He didn't make friends the first day, or the second, or the 10th. He sat alone at lunch. His teacher said he was polite, quiet, adjusting. He didn't get in trouble, he also didn't laugh. At home, he drifted from room to room like a small ghost, hands in his pockets, eyes too old. He used to talk to her about everything, strange dreams, funny things he noticed, the little dramas of childhood that used to fill the car rides. Now he answered in shrugs and yes ma'ams like a kid auditioning for adulthood. Alara tried everything. Board games on the kitchen table, even when the table wobbled. Movie nights with popcorn in a pot because she hadn't unpacked the microwave. A Saturday hike she'd hyped up like an adventure, only to watch Noah trudge beside her, silent, while she pointed out birds that he didn't care about. One night, she sat at the edge of his mattress and brushed hair off his forehead the way she used to when he was little. "Hey," she said softly. "Talk to me." Noah stared at the ceiling. After a long pause, he said, "Are we staying?" The question landed in her chest like a stone. Yes, she told him, because she needed it to be true. "We're staying. This is home." Noah turned his face toward the wall. "Okay." And that was all. If you ask Alara what she remembers most about those weeks, she'll tell you it wasn't the work. It wasn't even the money, though the money sat like a weight on her shoulders, always there. It was the way the forest pressed close to the property, as if the trees were leaning in. Briar Hollow's woods were not like the parks back in the city where paths were clear and people jogged by with bright shoes and water bottles. These woods felt older. Denser. Not hostile, exactly. Just aware. Alara noticed it in small things. The way the birds fell silent sometimes when she stepped onto the porch. The way the wind shifted, carrying a scent she couldn't place, something wild beneath the pine. The way the neighbors, friendly as they were, avoided talking about the mountain trails beyond a certain point. "Oh, you don't want to go too far up there," the diner cook told her one morning, flipping pancakes like he wasn't talking about anything important. "Gets rough. Folks get turned around." "Turned around," Alara repeated, trying to make it sound like a joke. He didn't smile. "Just saying." Noah, on the other hand, was drawn to the woods the way thirsty things are drawn to water. At first, Alara liked it. It got him out of the house. It gave him movement, air, something to do besides stare at walls while she scrubbed floors and counted bills. He'd disappear after school with a granola bar in his pocket and return with dirt on his knees, cheeks pink from cold, eyes slightly less empty. He didn't talk about what he did out there. But he came back with sticks arranged in careful bundles, feathers tucked into his jacket, smooth stones he lined up on the windowsill like they mattered. One afternoon, Alara found him in the backyard, crouched near the tree lean, staring into the shadows under the pines. "Noah," she called, trying not to sound sharp. "Dinner in 20. He didn't answer right away. When he finally stood, his gaze lingered on the dark between the trunks. His expression was focused. Not curious. Focused like he was listening to something she couldn't hear. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Nothing," he said, too quick. Alara studied him. "Did you see an animal?" Noah hesitated. "Maybe. Like a deer?" He shook his head once. "Bigger." Alara's tired brain offered up bear, and her stomach tightened. "Noah." It didn't come close, he said, like he'd already prepared that reassurance. It was just watching. Watching. Alara swallowed, suddenly aware of how close the forest really was. If you see it again, you come inside. Do you hear me? Noah nodded, but his eyes went back to the trees with something like longing. That night, while Alara patched a hole in the kitchen wall with spackle she'd bought on credit, she heard a sound outside, soft, quick, like paws on dead leaves. She paused, listening. The house creaked. The boiler coughed. Something brushed against the porch post, then moved away. Alara told herself it was a raccoon. It was easier to believe in raccoons. Days passed. The work piled up. The bills stacked higher. The diner owner started giving her pity shifts, extra hours, no questions asked. Alara accepted them because pride doesn't pay for roofing nails. Noah kept going to the woods. And slowly, the quiet in him changed shape. It didn't vanish. But it shifted, as if something inside him was waking up. He started eating more. He asked for seconds one night, and Alara's heart nearly cracked open with relief over something so small. He began to hover near the back door when she came home, waiting like he had news that mattered. One evening, as the sun went down and the mountain line turned purple, Noah met her on the porch with his hands behind his back. Alara set down the grocery bag and tried to smile through her exhaustion. "What's this?" Noah's eyes were bright. Not happy, exactly. Intent. "Mom," he said, and his voice held that rare tremor of excitement, "can I show you something?" Alara's first instinct was to say not tonight. She had paint to scrape and invoices to sort and a leak in the upstairs bathroom that had started again. But Noah's face looked like the boy she remembered. So she nodded. "Okay. Show me." Noah hesitated, like he was making sure she meant it. Then he stepped down off the porch and started toward the tree line, glancing back every few steps to make sure she followed. Alara did. The woods swallowed them in cool air and the scent of pine. The light dimmed fast under the canopy. Alara's skin prickled in that old, animal way people get when they realize how small they are compared to the world around them. "Noah," she called quietly. "Not too far." He didn't answer. He kept walking with purpose, weaving between trunks like he knew exactly where he was going. And then, just ahead, Alara saw it. A flash of pale fur in the shadows. A shape low to the ground. Something that moved too carefully to be healthy. Noah dropped to his knees. Alara's breath caught, because the thing in the leaves was not a deer. Not even close. It was a wolf. Smaller than she would have imagined, but unmistakable, long legs, thick coat, ears pinned back. It lay on its side, chest rising and falling too fast. Its flank was matted dark where blood had dried. Noah reached out slowly, reverently, and the wolf didn't snap. It turned its head and looked at Alara. Amber eyes. Too steady. Too aware. Alara's mouth went dry. "Noah," she whispered, and her voice came out thin. "Step back." Noah looked up at her, pleading already forming in his face. "It's hurt." Alara's brain tried to assemble the sensible options in order. Call animal control. Call a vet. Back away and get to safety. Wolves don't belong in kitchens. Wolves don't belong near children. Wolves don't belong in any version of a life she was trying to hold together. But Noah's hand was on the wolf's fur, gentle as a promise. And the wolf, wild, injured, impossible, didn't move away from him. It leaned into his touch. That should have scared Alara more than anything. Instead, the fear slid into something else, something colder, sharper, the sense that the woods had been holding its breath and was now watching to see what she would do next. Because this wasn't just an animal on the edge of town. This was a boundary crossed. And somewhere out there, beyond the trees, something was already moving, following a scent, closing distance, coming for what had been taken. Alara didn't know that yet. She only knew her son was looking at her like the decision she made right now would decide who he became. So she swallowed her fear, forced her voice steady, and said the words that would change everything. "Okay. We'll get her inside." Alara didn't realize how heavy a wolf was until she tried to carry one through a sagging back door while balancing a grocery bag on her elbow and a decade of common sense on her conscience. Noah walked backward in front of her, whispering encouragement like the animal could understand English. "Almost there. See? Mom's got you." The wolf, made a low sound that wasn't quite a growl and wasn't quite a whimper, then went limp again against Alara's arms, warm and startlingly real. Its fur smelled like rain-soaked pine and something sharper underneath, like metal. "Okay," Alara muttered through her teeth, mostly to herself. One night. She got the wolf onto an old quilt in the kitchen, near the space heater she'd been saving for her own aching feet. Noah knelt beside it immediately, as if the moment he let go the world would snatch it away. Alara hovered, hands on her hips, trying to pretend she was in control of the situation while her heart hammered like it was attempting escape. "You don't touch its mouth," she said. "You don't get your face near its face. You don't, Noah, I mean it." Noah nodded too quickly. "I know." Alara grabbed the first aid kit she'd bought after Noah's third skin knee incident in their old neighborhood. It was mostly bandages and antiseptic wipes and hope. She crouched carefully, inching closer to examine the wolf's side. The injury was shallow but angry-looking, scratched, torn, like it had caught on something jagged and panicked its way free. The wolf's breathing hitched when Alara dabbed at it. And then it looked at her again. Those amber eyes didn't have the blank, reactive panic she expected. They held something else, fear, yes, but directed. Focused. Like the wolf understood exactly what room it was in and exactly who stood over it. Alara swallowed. "You're not supposed to be here," she whispered before she could stop herself. The wolf blinked slowly, almost like a person would. Noah watched her with a strange intensity, like he was watching for the moment she changed her mind. Like he was bracing for the word no to finally land. Alara couldn't do it. Not tonight. Not when the first spark of joy she'd seen in him for months was curled up on a quilt at his knees. So she cleaned the wound. Wrapped what she could. Texted the diner cook for the number of the closest vet that might handle wildlife. Told herself she'd call first thing in the morning. And then she tried to sleep. That was the first mistake. The second was believing sleep would protect her from the sound of soft feet moving through an old house. Sometime past midnight, Alara woke to the faint creak of floorboards, deliberate, careful steps. Her eyes snapped open, and for a moment she couldn't remember where she was. Then she remembered everything at once: Briar Hollow, the boarding house, the wolf in her kitchen, her life balanced on the edge of one impossible decision. She sat up, every nerve tight. "Noah," she called softly. No answer. The house was quiet in that way old houses were quiet, full of murmurs and settling and distant sighs. Alara slid out of bed, feet cold against the floor, and made her way down the hall. Noah's mattress was empty. Panic lit behind her ribs. She moved faster, down the stairs, one hand skimming the wall for balance. The kitchen light was on. Noah stood there in his socks, frozen in the doorway like he'd been caught doing something sacred. His face was pale. "Alara," he whispered, voice shaking. "Mom. Don't scream." Alara's gaze snapped to the quilt. The wolf was gone. On the quilt instead sat a little girl. 9 years old, maybe. Small, thin in an oversized flannel shirt Noah must have pulled from a donation box. Wild hair fell in tangles down her back, and her skin was smudged with dirt like she'd been living in the woods for days. Her eyes, those same amber eyes, locked on Alara with naked terror. Alara did not scream. She went very, very still, as if any sudden movement would make the world crack. Noah took a step toward her. "I didn't make her do it," he said quickly. She just changed. She said she couldn't hold it." The girl's lips parted like she wanted to speak, but no sound came out. Her hands were clenched so hard her knuckles were white. Alara's mind tried to fit what she was seeing into a shape that made sense. A lost child. A runaway. An injured girl who'd somehow survived in the woods. Except Alara had cleaned that wound on a wolf's side hours earlier. She forced air into her lungs. "What's your name?" she asked, careful, gentle. The girl swallowed. "Lisa," she whispered. Noah exhaled like the sound of her voice proved she was real. "She's scared," he said, like Alara couldn't see that. She said she ran." Alara crouched slowly so she wasn't towering over her. "Ran from who?" Lisa's gaze flicked to the windows, the dark beyond the glass. Her voice dropped until it was almost nothing. "My father." That word hung in the kitchen, heavy in a way it shouldn't have been. Fathers were supposed to be complicated, not terrifying. Fathers were supposed to be absent, maybe, like Noah's had been. Not something a child ran from into wolfskin and wilderness. Alara glanced at Noah. His eyes were wide, pleading, already protective. "Alara," he whispered. "We can't send her back." Alara's instincts warred inside her, every alarm bell she owned going off at once, every hard lesson she'd learned screaming that this was how you got hurt. This was how you ended up on the wrong side of someone else's danger. But there was Lisa, shaking. There was Noah, finally awake to the world again, fiercely alive in a way she hadn't seen since before the move. Alara stood slowly. "Okay," she said, voice hoarse. "Okay. Nobody is sending anyone anywhere tonight." Lisa's shoulders sagged with relief so sharp it looked like pain. Noah smiled. It wasn't big. It wasn't carefree. But it was real. And Alara, without meaning to, felt the house tilt. The next few days were a careful, impossible dance. By day, Lisa was a wolf again, curled in the pantry corner where Noah had dragged in blankets and a water bowl, hidden behind stacked boxes of canned goods like a secret too big to fit anywhere else. By night, when the boarding house creaked and settled into darkness, she changed back. Alara didn't know if the shifts hurt. She suspected they did. Lisa always looked exhausted afterward, like transformation wasn't magic but muscle memory pushed too far. Noah guarded her like a solemn little sentry. He kept her upstairs when Alara had to work. He brought her food. He whispered stories to her in the quiet spaces between Alara's shifts and the house repairs she kept pretending she could keep up with. He also lied. Not badly. Not convincingly. But with effort. When Alara asked where he'd been, he said, "In my room," too quickly. When she asked why the pantry smelled like wet fur, he said, "Maybe the house is old." Alara let him. Because what was she supposed to do? Rip away the first thing that had made her son feel alive again? Call the sheriff and explain she'd found a child who sometimes turned into a wolf? No. Alara wasn't naive. She was just tired, and she was making choices the way drowning people did, one breath at a time. One night, after Noah had fallen asleep with his head against the kitchen table, Lisa sat across from Alara and picked at the edge of a chipped mug. "Alara," she said quietly, as if testing the name. Alara looked up from the stack of overdue bills she'd been pretending not to see. "Yes?" Lisa's eyes were huge in her too thin face. "You shouldn't keep me here." Alara's laugh came out humorless. "That's one way to put it." Lisa flinched, then hurried on. "He'll come." Alara's fingers tightened on the paper. "Your father?" Lisa nodded. "He always finds me." "How?" Alara asked before she could stop herself. "How would he even know where?" Lisa's gaze dropped to her own hands. "Scent. Blood. Pack." Alara stared at her. "Pack." Lisa's mouth twisted, a child's expression trying to carry an adult's understanding. "There are rules," she whispered. "He says rules are what keep us alive. He says humans are breakable." Alara felt a strange chill. "Your father thinks humans are breakable." Lisa nodded once. "He thinks we're dangerous." Her voice cracked on the word like she'd swallowed it too often. "He doesn't want me near you. He doesn't want me near him when he's angry." Noah stirred, mumbling in his sleep, and Lisa's eyes snapped toward him with fierce protectiveness. "He's strict," she added, as if Alara didn't already hear the fear under it. "He says I have to learn control. I have to learn the pack laws. I have to stop being soft." Alara's throat tightened. "So you ran because—" "Because I was scared," Lisa said, and the blunt honesty of it was worse than any dramatic explanation. "And because I heard him say I might have to be sent away. For everyone's safety." Alara's chest ached with a familiar pain, the feeling of a child being treated like a problem to solve instead of a person. "Lisa," she said gently, "you're a kid." Lisa's eyes shone. In his world, kids still have consequences. Alara stared at the old boarding house walls, at the peeling paint and the cracked trim, and realized she was standing in the middle of something she didn't understand. Still, she told herself, she could handle a runaway child. She couldn't handle what came with her. It happened on a Tuesday. Alara had just finished the morning shift at the diner, hands smelling like coffee and bacon grease. She drove home with her mind half on the roof leak and half on whether Noah had eaten anything that wasn't a granola bar. When she turned onto the gravel road, she saw a vehicle parked out front that didn't belong to any of her neighbors. Black. Clean. Expensive in a way that looked almost insulting against her sagging porch. A man stood at her front steps. He was tall, broad-shouldered, hair dark as wet earth. He wore a plain jacket, nothing flashy, nothing that screamed money, yet somehow everything about him looked like command. Like the world made space when he walked through it. Alara's heart stuttered. Because she knew him. Not as he was now, harder, sharper, built like someone who'd learned violence up close, but as he had been 10 years ago. A man with laughing eyes and warm hands. A man who'd kissed her in the rain like the world could end and it wouldn't matter. A man who'd vanished without a word. Alara gripped the steering wheel until her fingers ached. He turned at the sound of her car. And their eyes met. The air between them went tight, like a wire pulled too far. Cale, Alara breathed, the name tasting like old grief. His face didn't move much, but something in his gaze shifted, something guarded and careful, like he'd expected her and still wasn't ready. Alara, he said, and her name sounded wrong in his mouth. Too intimate. Too familiar. For a second, she couldn't move. She was back in a different life, smaller apartment, smaller dreams, no one, not even a thought yet. She was 22 and believing in promises. Then the anger caught up. She got out of the car and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. What are you doing here? Cale's eyes flicked over her face like he was memorizing damage. I'm looking for something, he said evenly. Alara let out a bitter laugh. That's rich. His jaw tightened. She saw it, restraint held too tight, the brittle edge under calm. I didn't come to argue. You didn't come to explain either, Alara snapped. 10 years, Cale. 10. His gaze hardened, just for a heartbeat. I know. The fact that he said it like it was a weight he carried, not a crime he'd committed, made Alara's anger flare hotter. Behind her, the house creaked as if it, too, was listening. Cale glanced toward the windows. Not casually. Not like a man admiring architecture. Like a man checking distance to a threat. Alara, he said, voice lower. Have you seen a wolf? Small. Injured. Alara's blood went cold. She forced her face into something blank. This is Briar Hollow, she said carefully. There are wolves. His gaze sharpened. This one isn't like the others. Alara's pulse thudded in her ears. She thought of Lisa's words, he always finds me. Noah appeared in the doorway behind the screen, drawn by voices. He froze when he saw Cale, eyes widening. Cale's gaze snapped to him. Something unreadable crossed his face, shock, maybe. Or recognition. Or something dangerously close to pain. Noah blinked, then looked at Alara as if asking who this stranger was and why he felt like thunder in human shape. Alara stepped slightly in front of Noah without thinking. Cale's eyes dragged back to Alara. You live here. Yes, she said sharply. And I'm not inviting you in. Cale's mouth twitched in something that wasn't quite a smile. I'm not asking. The words landed wrong. Like a warning. Alara lifted her chin. Then why are you here? Cale's gaze flicked once more to the house. His nostrils flared slightly, as if he was smelling something. Alara's stomach dropped. No, she told herself. Don't be ridiculous. People don't track by scent like animals. Cale took a slow breath. The control in him looked practiced, like someone who'd spent years holding back something that wanted out. I'm here, he said softly, because what I'm looking for is in your house. For the next hour, Alara lived inside a nightmare made of manners. Cale introduced himself to Noah as if he were a normal man on a normal day, his voice steady, his posture careful. He claimed he was searching for a lost animal and had been told a woman at the diner might have seen something unusual near the edge of town. Alara watched him lie with the smoothness of someone who'd had to do it often. She kept her own lies clutched tight. "No wolves here," she said, smiling with her teeth. "Just me and my son and a house that hates us." Cale's gaze stayed on the hallway that led to the pantry. He was listening to something Alara couldn't hear. Noah stood stiff, eyes darting from Alara to Cale like he was watching two storms collide. Lisa, hidden, was silent. Alara could feel her silence like pressure. Cale didn't push. Not openly. He asked polite questions. He looked at the porch supports like he cared about repairs. He offered names of contractors who might be reliable. Alara didn't believe a word of it. He was waiting. And the worst part, the part that made Alara's skin prickle, was that the longer he stood in her home, the more she remembered his presence. The pull of him. The way her body recognized him even as her mind screamed don't. Her anger had nowhere clean to go, so it curled around old desire and became something messy. Finally, when Noah was sent upstairs under the pretense of checking his homework, Alara stepped closer to Cale and lowered her voice. "Don't play nice," she hissed. "Not with me." Cale's gaze settled on her, heavy. "I'm not playing." "You left," Alara said, the words sharp enough to cut. "No note. No call. Nothing. You disappeared like I'd imagined you." A muscle jumped in his jaw. "Alara." "No," she snapped. "You don't get to say my name like that. Not after you." Cale's hands curled slowly at his sides, then relaxed again. Restraint. Always restraint, like he was holding something back. "I didn't leave because I wanted to," he said quietly. Alara let out a harsh laugh. "That's the excuse?" His eyes flashed, something feral for a split second, gone just as fast. "It's the truth." "Then tell me the truth," Alara demanded. "Tell me why you vanished. Tell me why you're here now. Tell me why you're looking at my pantry like it's going to bite you." Cale's gaze dropped to her mouth, just for a moment, so quick she could have imagined it. Then it lifted again, guarded. "I can't," he said. Alara's throat tightened. "You won't." Cale's voice turned low, rough. "You don't understand what you're in the middle of." "And you do?" Alara whispered. "You show up 10 years later on my doorstep and expect me to, what? Move aside? Trust you?" Cale's expression didn't soften, but something in his eyes did. Something like regret buried deep. "I never stopped," he began, then cut himself off like the words were dangerous. Alara's heart lurched at the almost confession. Before she could speak, a faint sound came from the pantry, one soft scrape, like claws against wood. Cale's entire body went still. His eyes locked on the pantry door. Alara stepped in front of it again, pulse roaring. "There's nothing." Cale's voice cut through her, quiet and deadly calm. "Alara." She hated the way her name sounded now, like a warning. The air snapped tight between them. And then Noah came barreling down the stairs, face flushed, eyes shining with panic. "Mom," he blurted. "I forgot, today's the thing, at school." Alara blinked. "What thing?" Noah swallowed. The parent thing." the after-school thing. You said you'd come. Alara's stomach dropped. She had forgotten. Of course she had. She'd been trying to hold a collapsing house together while hiding a wolf girl in the pantry. Cale watched Noah with sharp attention. Where? Noah hesitated. School. Alara glared. You are not coming with us. Cale didn't argue. He simply said, you shouldn't be alone right now. Alara opened her mouth to fight. Then Noah whispered, urgent, Mom, please. They've been, he stopped, lips pressing tight like he'd said too much. Alara's anger faltered. She saw it then, under the excitement and the lies, fear. Get your coat, she said, voice tight. Cale stepped back, giving her the illusion of control. But as they left, Alara didn't miss the way his gaze flicked once more toward the pantry. Like he was saying goodbye. Or like he knew it wouldn't be there much longer. Noah's school sat near the center of town, squat and practical, surrounded by a chain-link fence that tried to make it look safe. Alara marched into the hallway with Cale behind her, his presence drawing eyes the way a shadow draws attention. Noah walked a little ahead, shoulders tense. The parent thing turned out to be a small gathering in the gym, teachers talking about community and adjustment. Alara tried to listen. She tried to smile. She tried to pretend she wasn't counting minutes until she could get home and check on Lisa. It fell apart when she heard raised voices outside the gym doors. A boy's laughter, cruel, bright. Another voice saying, just give it back, freak. Alara's stomach clenched. She knew that tone. She'd heard it in her own childhood. She'd promised herself Noah would never have to. She stepped into the hallway in time to see two older kids shoving Noah against the lockers. One of them held Noah's backpack just out of reach. The other flicked Noah's hood up and down like he was playing with a puppet. Noah's face was pale, jaw tight. He didn't cry. He didn't fight back. He stood there enduring it, because he'd learned somewhere that making a scene only made it worse. Alara's vision tunneled. Hey, she snapped, voice cracking like a whip. Get away from him. The boys turned, startled. One of them sneered. We're just joking. Alara stepped forward. Give him his bag. Now. They hesitated until they noticed Cale. Cale didn't raise his voice. He didn't even step forward. He simply looked at them. Something in his gaze was so cold, so controlled, that the boys' confidence faltered. One of them tossed the backpack toward Noah with a muttered curse. Whatever. They started to move away, laughing too loudly as they retreated. Alara rushed to Noah, hands on his shoulders. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? Noah swallowed hard, eyes shining. I'm fine. Alara wanted to pull him into her chest and hold him there until the world stopped being sharp. Cale's voice came low behind her. Who are they? Noah shook his head quickly. Doesn't matter. But it did. Alara could feel Noah's humiliation like heat on her skin. She could feel his years of quiet endurance stacking up into something dangerous. And then she heard it. A sound that didn't belong in a school hallway. A low, vibrating growl, too deep, too wild, coming from just around the corner. Alara's blood turned to ice. Noah's eyes went wide. Because Noah knew that sound. Because Noah had left Lisa hidden at home, he had, hadn't he? A shape moved into the hallway. A wolf. Large enough to make adults freeze. Wild enough to make children scream. Teachers shouted. Parents stumbled back. Someone dropped a clipboard that clattered like a gunshot. The wolf's amber eyes locked on Noah. Then they snapped to the retreating bullies. In a blink, the wolf lunged. There was chaos, shouts, the scrape of shoes, the slam of locker doors as someone tried to hide behind them. The boys screamed as the wolf barreled into them, knocking one hard against the wall. It didn't bite. Not at first. It snarled, teeth flashing inches from a boy's face, pinning him in place with raw animal fury. The boy sobbed, hands up, begging. Noah stood frozen, horror and relief warring on his face. Lisa, he whispered, voice breaking. No, no, stop. The wolf's head jerked at his voice. For one heartbeat, it looked torn. Like part of it wanted to obey and part of it wanted to protect. Then the wolf's lips curled back farther. A teacher lunged forward with a broom like that would matter. Someone screamed for animal control. Someone else screamed for the police. And Cale moved. Not like a man. Like a force. He crossed the hallway in 2 strides, faster than Alara's brain could track. He grabbed the wolf by the scruff and hauled it back with brutal strength, strength that had no business existing in a human body. The wolf thrashed, snapping toward him. Cale didn't flinch. He murmured something low, guttural, words that didn't sound like English. The wolf stilled. Not calm. Not safe. But controlled, like a leash had tightened around its instincts. Alara stared, breath caught in her throat. Cale's eyes met hers over the wolf's back. For the first time, Alara saw something raw crack through his composure. Fear. Not for himself. For the wolf. For what it had almost done. For what it still might. Everyone back, Cale said, voice like iron. No one argued. They just obeyed. Alara's skin went cold. Because people didn't obey strangers like that. Not unless something in them recognized authority. Cale's hands tightened in the wolf's fur. His face was unreadable, but his eyes looked haunted, as if this scene had happened before, somewhere else, with blood at the end of it. He lowered his forehead briefly against the wolf's head, like a command and a prayer combined. Then, in a voice so quiet only Alara and Noah could hear, he said, "Enough." The wolf shuddered. And in the span of a breath, fur rippled into skin. A small girl collapsed in Cale's arms, shaking, eyes wide with terror and guilt. Lisa. Noah made a broken sound. You came, he whispered, to her, to the moment, to whatever impossible bond they'd formed. Lisa clutched his sleeve for one desperate second. I had to, she sobbed. They hurt you. Cale's grip tightened around her. His face went blank, but something in him trembled, like a man standing over a cliff edge, staring down at what he'd lost before. He looked at Alara then, truly looked at her, and whatever was in his eyes made her stomach drop. Because it wasn't just anger. It was inevitability. I'm taking her, he said. Alara stepped forward instinctively. Cale, wait. Cale's gaze snapped to her, sharp enough to stop her mid-step. You don't understand what almost happened. She's a child, Alara shot back, voice shaking. She was protecting. She was about to lose control in front of humans, Cale said, each word clipped like it cost him. In front of witnesses. Alara's heart hammered. Then help her. Don't punish her for being scared. Kale's jaw clenched so hard Alara saw the muscle jump. For a second, something in him looked like pain so old it had teeth. She doesn't get the luxury of being scared, he said quietly. Not in my world. And what about my world? Alara demanded, anger surging through fear. You show up, you drag your secrets onto my doorstep, you. Kale's eyes flicked to Noah. Noah stood trembling, fists clenched, looking at Kale with something raw in his face. Not hatred. Not yet. But something close. Kale's voice dropped. Keep him away from this, he said. Alara's anger cracked into something wounded. You don't get to tell me what to do with my son. Kale's gaze held hers, heavy with unsaid things. Alara. I never wanted you in this. And yet, she whispered, tears burning behind her eyes, here you are again. Kale's expression hardened like he had to make it hard to survive it. He shifted Lisa in his arms. Lisa reached toward Noah, sobbing. Noah. Noah lunged forward, and Alara grabbed him instinctively, holding him back. Noah, honey. Noah's voice shattered. Don't take her. Kale flinched, so fast Alara almost missed it. Like the words hit someplace unarmored. Then his face went cold again. I have to, he said, and it sounded like a sentence he'd been forced to speak before. He stepped back. Alara followed, panic rising. Kale, please, she's terrified of you. Kale's eyes flashed. She's alive because of me. And she ran because of you, Alara shot back. For a heartbeat, Kale looked like he might say something true, something that would explain 10 years of silence and the tight leash around his own soul. Instead, he said nothing. He turned. And he walked away with Lisa in his arms. People parted for him like the hallway itself understood it had no choice. Alara stood rooted to the floor, chest heaving, watching him disappear through the school doors into the bright afternoon light. Noah strained against her grip, crying now, quietly, furious at himself for it. Mom, he choked, voice breaking. We can't, he can't. Alara's throat burned. I know, she whispered, though she didn't know what that meant anymore. Outside, the black vehicle door opened. Closed. The engine started. And then it was gone. Just like 10 years ago. Alara's legs went weak, and she leaned against the lockers because the world had suddenly become too big and too cruel and too full of things she couldn't fix with hard work. Noah stood beside her, wiping at his face with the back of his sleeve like he was ashamed of tears. His eyes stayed on the empty space where the car had been. There was devastation in his expression. And beneath it, quiet, steady, terrifying, something new. Resolve. Something inside Noah hardened into a shape Alara didn't recognize yet. And if Alara had been able to hear the thoughts behind her son's eyes, she might have understood the truth before it came crashing down. Noah wasn't going to wait for adults to save them. He was going to find a way to bring Lisa back. No matter what it cost. When Alara and Noah got home, the boarding house felt like it was holding its breath. The pantry door stood slightly ajar, blankets rumpled, the water bowl tipped over as if someone had left in a hurry. The kitchen, once cramped with impossible life, was suddenly too clean, too quiet, too normal. Normal had never felt so cruel. Alara moved through the rooms like a woman searching for something she already knew was gone. Her hands kept finding small traces of Lisa without meaning to, a smear of dirt on the stair rail, a strand of dark hair caught on the edge of the quilt, one tiny footprint in the dust near the back door. Noah didn't speak. He walked to the pantry, crouched, and set the bowl upright with slow, careful movements, like if he did it gently enough, he could convince the universe to undo what had happened. "Elara," he said finally, voice thin. She turned. Her throat was too tight to answer. Noah's eyes were dry now, but something in them had changed. The fear was still there, and the hurt, but under it was a hard, quiet focus that didn't belong in a 10-year-old. "Are we just going to let him take her?" he asked. Elara flinched at the word let, as if Noah thought she'd had any choice at all. "I don't know," she whispered honestly. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do." Noah nodded once, absorbing that like information, not comfort. Alara's hand shook as she reached for him, but he stepped back before she could pull him close. "I'm tired," he said, voice flat. "Can I go to bed?" Of course, Elara managed. He climbed the stairs without looking back. Elara stood alone in the kitchen with the silence pressing in, and for the first time since she'd moved to Briar Hollow, she felt something crack. Not a dramatic breakdown. Not sobbing on the floor with the lights off. Just the slow, quiet unraveling of a woman who had been holding too much for too long. She tried to do normal things. She washed a plate that wasn't dirty. She checked the locks twice. She opened the fridge and stared at it like food might explain anything. Then she sat at the kitchen table and put her head in her hands and realized she was shaking. Kale had come back like a storm, destroyed what little safety she'd managed to build, and vanished again, taking a child with him, taking answers with him, taking the last tender thread Noah had reached for. And Elara hated him for it. She hated him for leaving 10 years ago. She hated him for showing up now and making her feel things she'd buried for survival. She hated him for looking at her like he knew her, like he still had some claim on her life. But worst of all, she hated him because a part of her, small and traitorous, had been relieved when he'd taken control at the school. Because for one terrifying moment, she had been helpless, and he had been capable. Elara pressed her palms to her eyes until she saw stars. Upstairs, the house creaked. And Elara realized she was afraid of her own son's silence. Noah was quiet for 3 days. Not the withdrawn quiet Elara had grown used to before Lisa. Not the shut-down quiet of a boy protecting himself from disappointment. This was different. This was intentional. He ate when food was placed in front of him. He went to school and came home on time. He did his homework without being asked. He moved through the house like someone making plans in his head. And Elara, watching him, felt that cold prickle of maternal instinct that said, something is happening under the surface. On the 4th evening, Elara came home from the diner to find Noah sitting on the porch steps with his jacket on. Not playing. Not staring off into space. Waiting. "Hey," Elara said carefully, keys tight in her hand. "You okay?" Noah looked up. "Can I go into town?" he asked. Elara blinked. "It's dark." "I know," he said. "I'll be careful." Elara's tired brain reached for the easy answer, no. The responsible answer, absolutely not. The answer that would keep her heart from crawling out of her chest, I don't trust the world right now. But Noah's face was too calm. "Elara," he said softly, and the way he said her name, like he was older than 10, made her stomach twist. "I need to do something." A chill ran through her. What something? Noah hesitated. Just something. Please. Alara stared at him, at the determined set of his jaw, at the way his shoulders were squared like he'd decided the shape of the world and his place in it. And Alara, who had spent years trying to keep her son safe by controlling what she could, realized she'd already lost control. No, she said firmly, and tried to sound like a mother again instead of a woman falling apart. Not alone. If you're going somewhere, I'm coming. Noah's eyes flickered, disappointment, then calculation. Finally, he nodded. Okay. They drove into town under a sky full of sharp stars. Briar Hollow after dark felt even smaller, even quieter, as if everyone had agreed to stay inside and let the woods have the night. Noah directed her down Main Street, past the diner, past the closed hardware store, past the little library with its dark windows. Then he pointed toward the outskirts, where the streetlights thinned and the forest crept closer. Alara said, voice tight. Where are we going? Noah swallowed. I heard something at school, he said. About a man who can help. Alara's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Help with what? Noah looked straight ahead. With things that don't make sense. Alara's blood chilled. Noah. It's for Lisa, he whispered. And, for us. The road narrowed. Gravel crunched under the tires. The trees leaned in like they wanted to listen. Then Noah pointed to a building Alara had never noticed in daylight, a small, crooked storefront tucked behind a row of pines, its windows dark, its signs so faded she couldn't read it. A bell above the door chimed when they entered. The air inside was warm, thick with incense and old paper. Shelves crowded with jars and bottles and bundles of dried herbs lined the walls. Wind chimes hung from the ceiling, barely moving, making soft sounds like distant whispers. A man sat behind the counter as if he'd been waiting. He was neither old nor young. His hair was silver at the temples, but his eyes were bright and sharp, like something ancient wearing a human face for convenience. He smiled as if Noah's arrival had been inevitable. Noah Rowan, he said, voice smooth. Alara froze. How do you know my son's name? The man's gaze flicked to her, amused. Mothers always ask that first, he said. Sit, Alara. If you're going to witness a bargain, you should at least be comfortable. Alara's heart slammed against her ribs. A bargain? Noah stepped forward before Alara could drag him back. Are you the one who grants wishes? He asked, voice steady. The man's smile widened, just enough to show teeth. I grant possibilities, he said. Wishes are what people call it when they don't want to admit the cost. Alara grabbed Noah's sleeve. We're leaving, she snapped. Noah didn't move. Please, he said quietly. Just listen. Alara looked at him, really looked, and saw the ache behind his determination. Saw the boy who had finally smiled and then watched that smile get ripped away. Her throat tightened. She let go of his sleeve, but her body stayed poised to snatch him up and run. The man leaned forward slightly. Tell me what you want, he said. Noah swallowed. His voice came out small but clear. I want humans to be safe, he said. If they're bitten. Alara's breath caught. Noah. Noah glanced at her. Kale took Lisa because he thinks humans and shifters can't be together, he said, voice trembling now. Because it's dangerous. Because he's scared. And he's right. If shifters bite humans, humans die. That's what Lisa told me. The man's eyes gleamed with interest. And you want to change that law of nature? Noah nodded once. Yes. Alara stepped forward, panic rising. Noah, you can't, this isn't. The man lifted a hand, gentle as a blade. He can, he said. The question is what he is willing to give. Noah's chin lifted. Anything. Alara's voice broke. Noah, stop. The man's gaze softened, not kindly, but with the patience of someone watching a predictable tragedy unfold. Noah, he said, your request is not a small one. To alter what happens when shifter blood enters human veins, that is a rewriting. It requires an anchor. Noah frowned. An anchor? A sacrifice, the man said simply. Something fundamental. Something that shapes your future. Alara's stomach dropped through the floor. No. Noah's hands clenched. What kind of sacrifice? The man's eyes flicked to Alara, then back to Noah. Hope, he said. A specific hope. The one you hold closest to your heart. Noah went still. Alara felt it, the moment the words found the bruise Noah never spoke about. Noah's biological father. The unanswered questions. The empty space in every family tree project. The quiet ache Noah carried like a stone in his pocket. Alara's throat closed. Noah, she whispered. Noah's eyes shone, but his face didn't crumple. It hardened instead. The man's voice was almost gentle. Give up the hope of ever meeting him, he said, and I will give you what you ask. A future where the bite does not kill. Where humans can cross without dying. Alara lunged toward the counter. Absolutely not. The man didn't move. He simply looked at her, calm, as if he'd seen 1,000 mothers arrive too late. Noah turned to Alara. His voice was small. Mom, he said, you said we're staying. You said this is home. You said we don't run anymore. Alara's eyes flooded. This isn't your job, she choked. You're 10. Noah's jaw trembled. Lisa is 9, he whispered. And she's alone with someone she's scared of. Alara reached for him, desperate. We'll find another way. Noah shook his head. He always finds her, he said softly, repeating Lisa's words. But maybe if humans aren't breakable, he won't be so afraid. Alara's sob caught in her chest like a broken thing. Noah. Noah blinked hard, looking at the man behind the counter as if he were staring down a cliff. Then he nodded once. Okay, he whispered. Take it. Alara made a sound, half scream, half sob, and grabbed him, pulling him to her chest like she could physically stop the universe from accepting the bargain. Noah clung to her for one brief, fierce second. Then he pulled away and faced the counter. I give up my hope, he said, voice steady now. I give up, ever meeting him. I don't want to wonder anymore. I don't want to wait for something that isn't coming. Alara's knees went weak. The man's smile deepened, satisfied. So spoken, he murmured. So bound. He reached across the counter and pressed 2 fingers to Noah's forehead. The air changed. Not dramatic lightning or swirling shadows, something subtler. Like the pressure in a room when a storm is about to break. The wind chimes overhead began to tremble without wind. Noah gasped. His eyes widened, then went distant, like someone had reached inside him and gently removed a thread he'd been holding too tight. Alara lunged, but the moment held her still. The man withdrew his hand. "It is done," he said. Noah swayed. Alara caught him, hands shaking. "Noah," she whispered, frantic. "Noah, talk to me." Noah blinked slowly. "I'm okay," he said, voice quiet. Then, softer, "It doesn't hurt." But when he looked at Alara, something was missing. Not love. Not warmth. Just, that particular longing was gone, like a candle snuffed out. Alara's heart broke clean in two. The man leaned back, satisfied. "The change will ripple," he said. "Not immediate. But inevitable. The next time a shifter chooses to cross that boundary with a human, the human will live." Alara's voice shook with rage. "You stole from my child." The man's gaze was almost pitying. "No," he said. "He paid." Cale returned 3 nights later. Alara was in the kitchen scrubbing the same spot on the counter over and over because she didn't know what else to do with her hands. Noah sat at the table, quiet, drawing in a notebook. He'd been drawing wolves. Over and over. Always the same amber eyes. The knock came at midnight. 3 slow, heavy knocks, like a fist on a coffin lid. Alara froze. Noah's pencil stopped moving. The house held its breath. Alara crossed the kitchen with her heart in her throat, opened the door, and found Cale on her porch. He looked like he hadn't slept. Shadows sat under his eyes, and his face was carved with restraint so tight it looked painful. He was alone. Alara's anger surged on instinct, hot and immediate. "Where is she?" Cale's gaze lifted to hers, and whatever he saw there made something in him soften and break. "Safe," he said, voice rough. "With the pack. With guards. With people who understand what she is." "And what am I?" Alara snapped. "A fool? A mistake you can erase?" Cale flinched as if she'd struck him. Noah appeared behind Alara, silent as a ghost. Cale's gaze dropped to the boy, and something sharp flickered in his eyes, recognition and pain so fast it almost didn't show. Alara stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind her so Noah couldn't hear. He heard anyway. Alara knew he would. "You left me," Alara whispered, voice shaking. "You left, and you never told me why. Then you come back and take a child from my arms like you're the only one who gets to decide what's safe." Cale's jaw clenched. His hands curled at his sides, then forced themselves open again. "I did it because I've watched what happens when we lose control," he said, voice low. "I've watched humans die because someone like me wanted something and thought love would be enough." Alara's throat tightened. "So you punish your daughter for being alive?" Cale's gaze went distant, haunted. "My brother," he said quietly, "killed a human." Alara's anger faltered. Cale swallowed, and for the first time she saw him not as the man who abandoned her, but as someone carrying a grief heavy enough to shape his bones. "He didn't mean to," Cale said. "He lost control. One moment of rage, one moment of fear, and there was blood on his hands. The pack took him to the council. The humans demanded justice. The council executed him." Alara's breath caught. Cale's eyes burned. "They made me watch," he whispered. "They said it would teach the next alpha what his duty was." Alara stared at him. Next Alpha. Kale's gaze lifted, sharp and steady. It became me. The words clicked into place like a lock turning. Alpha. Pack. Laws. Control. Alara felt the world tilt. She began, but her voice failed. Kale's mouth tightened. I never wanted you in this, he said again, and now she understood the weight of it. I loved you. He cut himself off, breath rough. And when my brother died, I realized what we are. What we can do. I realized if I stayed with you, if I let you become mine, I would eventually hurt you. Or someone would hurt you to punish me. Alara's eyes filled. So you left me to protect me. Kale's gaze was agony. I left because I was terrified, he admitted. Terrified of myself. Terrified of what loving you would cost. Alara's anger wavered, reshaping into something else, something softer, more painful. And now, she whispered. You're back because of Lisa. Kale nodded once. She ran to you, he said, voice low. To a human. A mother. She chose you because she felt safe with you. Alara's throat tightened. She was safe with me. Kale's eyes flashed. Until she wasn't, he said, and the old terror rose in him like a tide. At the school, Alara, she almost. She didn't, Alara snapped. Kale swallowed hard. It didn't matter, he said. Witnesses saw. Humans saw. They'll talk. They'll hunt. And if my daughter is cornered again, she will bite. Alara's heart pounded. Kale's voice dropped, raw. And if she bites you, if she bites any human, they die. Noah's voice drifted from behind the door, quiet as a knife. Not anymore. Kale froze. Alara's blood went cold. She turned, flung the door open. Noah stood there in the hallway, notebook in his hand, eyes too calm. Alara whispered. Noah, what did you do? Noah swallowed. I fixed it, he said simply. Kale stepped forward, a dangerous edge in him. What does that mean? Noah's hand shook, but his voice stayed steady. I met someone, he said. A man in town. He said he could change things if I paid. Alara's knees went weak. Noah. Noah looked at her, eyes shining with something like apology. I didn't want to, he whispered. But I didn't see another way. Kale's gaze sharpened, predatory. Paid with what? Noah hesitated. Then he said the words that shattered Alara's heart all over again. My hope, he whispered. Of meeting my real dad. Alara made a broken sound. Kale went still, staring at Noah like he'd been punched somewhere deep. Noah lifted his chin, tears spilling now. I don't want it anymore, he said. I don't want to wish for someone who doesn't come. I want Lisa back. I want us to be safe. Alara grabbed Noah, pulling him close, trembling. Oh, baby, she choked. Oh, Noah. Kale's face looked carved from stone. Then, slowly, something in him cracked. He exhaled, and the sound was half grief, half awe. That, he said quietly, is courage. Alara looked up at him, eyes wet. He's a child, she whispered fiercely. He shouldn't have to be. Kale's gaze softened, haunted. And yet he was, he said. For you. For her. Alara's chest heaved. The truth settled in her bones with aching clarity. Love had already crossed the divide. A 10-year-old boy had done it first. Cale stayed that night. Not in Alara's bed. Not on her porch. In a chair by the kitchen window, watching the dark like it might rise up and swallow them. Alara sat across from him with Noah asleep upstairs, and the air between them felt like a bridge made of fragile glass. If what Noah did is true, Cale said quietly, then the old laws are changing. Alara swallowed. Then Lisa can come back. Cale's jaw tightened. Yes, he said. But it won't stop people from fearing us. It won't stop the council from punishing weakness. Alara stared at him. You're still afraid. Cale's gaze lifted, and she saw it, the fear that had ruled him for 10 years. The fear that had made him leave. The fear that had made him take Lisa. I am, he admitted. Because love makes us reckless. Alara's voice shook. And fear makes you cruel. Cale flinched. Alara took a slow breath, feeling something settle inside her, not desperation, not obsession. Choice. I'm done being on the outside, she whispered. Cale's eyes narrowed. Alara. I want to understand, she said. I want to stop being breakable, Cale. I want to stop being something you can lose. Cale's breath hitched. No. Alara's jaw tightened. You don't get to decide. Cale's voice went low, urgent. If you choose this, it's irreversible. It's pain. It's risk. It could kill you. Alara's hands trembled, but her gaze didn't. Then tell me the truth, she said. Tell me everything. And let me choose with my eyes open. Cale stared at her, and for the first time, the alpha mask slipped enough to show the man beneath. He nodded, once. Then he said, softly, like a vow, only if you mean it. I mean it, Alara whispered. Cale stood. The room felt smaller with him towering over her, with that wild gravity in him held on a leash. He didn't touch her. Not yet. Consent matters, he said, voice rough. More than fate. More than hunger. More than what the pack expects. Alara's throat tightened. She nodded. Cale stepped closer. Close enough that she could feel his heat, close enough that her body remembered him even as her mind braced for fear. Last chance, he murmured. Alara lifted her chin. Do it. Cale's eyes flashed, pain, longing, terror. Then he lowered his mouth to the place where her pulse beat in her throat, and he bit. Pain exploded through her like lightning. Alara gasped, fingers clawing at Cale's shoulders, not to push him away but to hold on. Fire spread under her skin, racing through her veins, turning her bones molten. The room spun. The walls warped. For a moment she thought she would die. For a moment she understood Cale's fear. Then she felt something else. A shift. A door opening. A bond snapping into place like a lock finding its key. Cale pulled back, breathing hard, eyes wild. Alara, he whispered, voice shaking. Stay with me. Alara clung to him, trembling, fighting for air, fighting through the storm inside her. I'm here, she rasped. I'm choosing it. The pain peaked, then broke. And Alara fell into darkness like a wave. Time didn't heal the way people pretended it did. It rebuilt. Weeks later, the boarding house looked different. Not fixed, there were still creaks and peeling paint and projects waiting, but alive. People came. Not tourists. Pack. Men and women who moved like the woods belonged to them. They repaired the porch supports. Replaced shingles. Reinforced doors. They worked with quiet efficiency, as if taking care of Alara's home was taking care of their own. Lisa returned on a gray morning, stepping onto the porch with her chin lifted and her eyes wary, like she expected punishment. Noah met her halfway down the steps and threw his arms around her so hard she squeaked. Lisa clung back, fierce and relieved. "You did it," she whispered. Noah's smile was small, steady. "I told you," he said. "We don't run anymore." Cale stood behind them, watching like a man afraid to blink. Alara stepped onto the porch beside him. She felt different now. Stronger, yes. But not invincible. She felt the forest in her blood sometimes, howling just beneath the surface, a wildness that wasn't anger, but power. And she felt the bond with Cale, steady, warm, honest in a way nothing in her life had ever been. Cale glanced at her, and the fear that had once ruled him looked quieter now. Not gone. Just no longer in charge. "You're sure?" he murmured, voice low. Alara met his gaze. "I already chose," she said. Cale's hand brushed hers, careful, like he still couldn't believe he was allowed. Noah and Lisa ran into the yard, chasing each other in circles, laughter bright and real. And when Noah tripped and Lisa shifted, just for a second, a flicker of fur and wild grace, Noah only laughed harder, unafraid. Because the world had changed. Not because fear disappeared. Because love had been brave enough to rewrite the rules. In the last light of evening, Alara stood with Cale and the children at the edge of the forest. The trees loomed, ancient and watchful, but they no longer felt like a wall. They felt like a doorway. Noah slipped his hand into Alara's, Lisa slipped hers into Cale's, and for a moment the four of them stood still, human and shifter, mother and alpha, children who had paid too much and still managed to smile. The wind moved through the pines, carrying their scent into the world. A family. A pack. And for the first time, Briar Hollow didn't feel like a hiding place. It felt like home. If this story caught your attention, subscribe and join us for the next chapter.